Hello, everybody. This is episode 32 Extended. Now, on the full episode this week that was called Progressive Tattooing, I told you that I was going to share with you the full interviews with Doreen Garner and Tamara Santibanez. And what I didn't realize is I pretty much put the whole thing with Tamara in that episode. So what I've got here for you then is the rest of my conversation with Doreen. So that's what we're going to do. But before we do that, I want to mention that if you are in Austin, Texas for the Star of Texas Tattoo Revival, January 31st through February 2nd, you can get tattooed by Tamara and or Doreen, as well as Virginia Elwood, who you heard on the show in episode 28, and Sophie C'est La Vie. That's all happening at the Saved Tattoo booth at the Star of Texas Tattoo Revival, TattyCon. So if you're there, go get tattooed, or at least go say hi to all of them. And one last thing before we get started, I want to tell you about our sponsor, GoReminders. Eliminate no-shows, save time, and increase revenue with GoReminders. It is simple. Automatic appointment reminders via text messages and email. This pays for itself with just one avoided no-show appointment. It's easy to get started, get set up in 10 seconds, and try it completely free for 2 weeks. This is all automated. Once you enter the appointment information, GoReminders automatically sends a text message or email to your customer about that appointment. This can also be customized to provide more info. Do you have multiple locations? You can make sure that these automated reminders are specifying which location the customer's booked for. And that is just one of the many ways that you can harness the true power of GoReminders. Do you remember my episode with Julie Moon from season 2? I do. It was good. It was a fun one. Well, here's a testimonial about GoReminders from Julie Moon Studios. They said, "We have had only one no-show in the past 6 or 7 months that we have been using them. And that was after 10 no-shows in a couple weeks before starting to use GoReminders. So what else do I have to tell you? Head over to GoReminders.com/booksclosed right now to get a 10% lifetime discount on your account. You'll get started today with that free 2-week trial and level up your customer experience, all while helping efficiently manage your own booking. GoReminders.com/booksclosed for a 10% off lifetime discount. And let them know that, I gotta go. I have an appointment to get to. And now, let's get back to my conversation with Doreen Garner. And again, if you missed that first part of this one, make sure to go back to episode 32, Progressive Tattooing, and check that out. Looking back to when you were a kid and you saw the temporary tattoos being given out and you thought, I could do that, and then you did. Where do you think that confidence comes from?
I don't know. I think recently I've been noticing a pattern with myself, and it's that I like enter into these white male dominated communities, and I'm like, no. Like I really try to make space for myself, and I'm really determined to make my voice heard. And so, I think that, I don't know, that's just something that has increasingly become important to me. I don't know. What was the question again? We can cut that part.
No, just the root of your confidence, because I could.
Oh, right.
I think I could, before talking to you, I could have assumed that because you've taken like the educational path of learning art in a real way. And I know that can create confidence. And as you do more things and in more projects and you get more recognition for your work, then obviously you're going to become more confident in the things you do in the future.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've had that confidence all along. And that's what interests me.
Yeah. I guess I've had it all along. There were definitely some years where I was like in particularly shy. And I think that I ended up gaining more confidence while I was in grad school. And it was because, full grown adult lady. But being put into these situations where I did have to like combat blatant racism within an art institution from 19-year-old kids. And so it's like, okay, you really need to figure out how to be a leader and how to teach people how to treat you. And also not tolerate any bullshit by any means. And so I think just, by growing up and growing into myself, I've just been increasingly confident and also surrounding myself by other strong Black women, their strength in numbers. And, I just feel like that's also been a large component of just me, feeling like I can do it more so because I have people behind me that are like pushing me and counting on me to, get that done.
Yeah. So this will sound like a dumb question, but I'm going to lob you an underhand toss just for discussion's sake here. Why do you think it's important for more diversity to be, introduced into tattooing?
I think it's more important. It's important for there to be diversity in tattooing, mostly because a lot of the tattooing practice has come from cultures that are dominated by people of color. And so I think that it's responsibility to bring that focus back to them. I think that there are many people of color that want to participate in body modification, and there aren't many spaces where they feel safe to do that, or people that they feel safe enough to do that with. And so it's important because the conversations need to change, and the interactions between people need to change in general. I think by including more people of color in different shops, that it's just going to provide a different clientele, a different experience for people. And I think that, people will be able to come together and appreciate the process and the movement as one rather than separately. And I don't know, I think that by including more people of color, that's the only way to start to diminish a lot of, these legacies of white supremacy in tattooing.
So as someone who's self-taught, how do you go about seeking information? It's just like technical information about tattooing.
Right. It was really hard.
Yeah. It's hard when you have guidance, so to not have as much.
Yeah, it was definitely hard. And I think I ended up struggling the most with using not the best equipment. And, I'm just like doing these tattoos over and over. I'm like, why are they coming out like this? Like, why aren't the lines clean? It's like, oh, because I'm using these shitty needles. Or, so, after a while, it's like, someone comes and tells you like, you can buy a better machine than that. Or like, you should probably buy needles from this company instead. Or maybe like, work with this ink instead because it's a little less messy. And so, just as I was like, tattooing and practicing, I was just constantly like, asking people for advice. So like, asking like Tamara and Anderson for advice, like, oh, like I'm having trouble with this. Like, can I come by and watch? And so, there were definitely times where, I just popped up at Saved and like sat there for a few hours and just really watched them work and like have conversations with them and ask them questions while they're working, which was really great and generous.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess most people starting out who are self-taught don't have access to such great tattooers either. So that's like truly a luxury to have resources like that are willing to share with you is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Do you see tattooing as a performance art in itself?
Oh, yeah. I think tattooing has so much to do with submission and dominance and vulnerability, building intimate relationships with, clients because, I think tattooing is probably one step away from sex as far as like intimacy is involved. It's like, there's body fluids coming out, a lot of like touching, stretching. I even think that, the shaving process is very intimate and sometimes uncomfortable for me because it is so weird.
Yeah, most people don't let a stranger shave their arm or their leg or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's really gentle and subtle, but
until you give them a little slice by accident and they're bleeding before the stencil goes on.
Oh my God. Yes. Worst nightmare. I think all those parts are really performative. And even like thinking about medicine, just like putting on the gloves and like setting up your like green soap and witch hazel and all this stuff. And like, setting up your machine, I feel like it ends up looking so close to surgery. And, for the client too, they're really like counting on you to know what you're doing and like kind of like dominating them and like putting them in their place so that they know like how to hold themselves during the tattoo and like, making sure that they're okay, checking in with them. And so, I feel like, in some ways I'm performing as like a surgeon and also a nurse and also a healer.
It's a lot of hats to wear.
Yeah,
at
so many
once.
hats.
And then you also have to try to do a nice tattoo on top of all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at how trusting people can be when they get tattooed, especially if they just walk into the shop and they say, I want to get this little thing. And then they're not even always necessarily choosing me to do their tattoo. It's just I'm next up and I do their tattoo. And instantly they're just trusting of it. And sometimes that can backfire on people, unfortunately, when you deal with like inexperienced tattooers or like people who don't have their customers' best interest at heart. But I think it's a similar feeling to someone going into a doctor. They see the gloves, they see all the stuff like you're explaining it, and they snap into that mode where they're like, I'm in a place where I'm safe and people know what they're going to do to me, and I just need to go with it.
Right.
I mean, ideally that's how it goes. People are trusting, but
Yeah.
it doesn't always happen. But overall, I think I don't know. Some people make it weird too.
No. Some people are totally predatory and exploitative.
Yeah, on both sides, client or I mean, the tattooer has a place of power in this, as far as like the balance goes. So that's obviously predatory if it's abused.
Yeah.
So recently you did what was truly tattooing as a performance art. You were tattooing up on stage.
Yeah.
What was that all about? I saw the photos and it looked pretty cool.
I'm still like coming down off a cloud from that experience. That
was the weekend that I had messaged you. It was like the day before that, and then you didn't get back for a little while. And I was like, I'm just going to give you some time because that was probably a crazy weekend.
Right. Oh, no, it was an insane weekend. So we did a tattoo performance at MoMA PS1 on March 3rd. And it was me, Tamara Santibanez, Anderson Luna, and Tommy Martinez. And we did a series of performances that was all a part of alternative modes of penetration. And, a lot of it focused just on the process of tattooing and the experience rather than the imagery that comes out at the end. And so with Tamara's performance, that one really focused on submission and dominance. And there was bondage that happened, and then Tamara tattooed the person that was being bound's mother's name on their abdomen. And so, a lot of that tattoo process was silent with some meditation music. And then with Anderson and Tommy's performance, Tommy connected contact mics to Anwar's skull. And then Anderson tattooed Anwar's head. And so there was a mic also close by the tattoo machine. So you could hear the sound of the tattoo machine on its own, but then you would also hear the sound that was transmitted through Anwar's head. And so you kind of would hear the sound surrounding the room. So there were 8 speakers in the dome at PS1. And so you actually heard the sound that came from the inside of Anwar's head, which is really crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so Tommy was actually like throwing the sound to different speakers. So like, you were totally in it. Which was really great. And my performance was a little bit different. So while we were doing a lot of the practicing for the performance, originally we wanted to do a performance where we attached an EEG machine to a client. And then when we tattooed them, the data from the EEG machine would generate an image. But the thing about the EEG machines is that's kind of like pseudoscience. And so we couldn't get any real dramatic data to make an interesting image. But while we were doing a lot of the practicing for that, I just told Anderson, I was like, let's just like, do some lines on my hand just so we can like figure out if, the spikes are going to happen. And so he did that. And, the next day I was just looking at my hand. I'm like, ooh, I like it. There was no ink or anything. It was just red. And so then I just started, thinking about, the idea of like I don't know, kind of like a torture where there's no like image in the end, like thinking about the tattoo process, just the process on its own and not the image. And so, then, I was in my bed one night and just like thinking about random shit. And I started thinking about the Scarlet Letter and how, you have to wear like the A for adultery. And so I don't know how, but I was just thinking about like turning the A sideways and I'm like, oh, okay, it forms a triangle. And that also forms the image of the transatlantic slave trade. And so I was thinking about ways to use this as an idea. And so I did an Instagram post where I put out an open call for white boys. And so I ended up getting about 6 white boys on stage. And, I would select people in the audience, people of color, to choose who was going to get tattooed. And so basically they ended up getting a scarlet letter on their chest, which was the image of the transatlantic slave trade, but with water. So a lot of the redness from their skin, from like irritation and blood, actually made the scarlet letter itself. Yeah.
It's a lot of layers to that.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I mean. You're bringing this fine art brain into the tattoo world.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me because this sort of stuff, through the years we've had like, Ed Hardy will do museum exhibitions and he'll curate stuff, but it's all like very much just showing what's happening in tattooing or what's happening in his world of tattooing. Mm-hmm. So to truly bring tattooing into a venue like that in such a way that you would see other fine art, applied to it, it's new. And I've never been part of anything like that. And I think it's so interesting, especially with like the pop-up events and the stuff, the ways that you are doing tattooing, that's just like not the norm at all.
Right. And I think that also comes from me being self-taught because I like haven't
you don't feel the boundary the restrictions.
I don't really know, all the unspoken rules because I just haven't been in those spaces a lot. And so I feel like that has helped me to just think about it in a completely different way where I'm just like kind of like tossing myself in the middle rather than like, slowly like working my way up. It's like, oh, like, what if I do this? Yeah. How's that going to change things? And I feel like because I don't have like all that history, that I'm just able to like think out of the box a little bit more.
Right. Which I think the more you do it, it's just going to set an example for a lot of other people to do the same thing. And I think that's how change will be spawned from people like you who are not, restricted from.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because, I'm friends with so many, artists in the art world, and it's like, oh, they, want to practice tattooing too. And it's like, oh yeah, like you can do it. I really like the idea of, people being able to collect art, on their own terms. And so especially like thinking about fine artists and like painters and sculptors, who have like a very real practice, like, that are being shown in the Whitney Biennial and like, all these other art fairs and all these other places. What does it mean to be able to collect their work, like as an investment? And also like thinking about, in some cases when pieces end up getting put in auction, the problems of that, like, oh, okay, I sold this painting for $5,000 and all of a sudden now it's worth $1 million in this auction house. And that's something that I'll never get back. And so, in a way, I think that it's a really interesting way to collect art, where you're not necessarily losing any money as the artist, but you're also allowing people that appreciate your work to have.
What do you think about that, the commodification of art? And it's even, we're seeing in tattooing now, a lot of people are like, a lot of customers are treating it just like as a commodity. Like, you owe this to me. This is your job. Like, just do your job.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I think that similarly in the art world, you're allowed to, choose your own exhibitions, choose who gets to collect your work. And so I think in that way, people, should be able to take the liberty to do that too. Like, no, actually, I don't want you to have one of my pieces. And, of course, that also has to be for the right reasons.
Right. What is Invisible Man Tattoo?
Invisible Man Tattoo. That was a project that I did last year at Recess, which is a nonprofit art organization. And they have a residency program where it's really centered around public engagement. And so, that was around the time when I was like, starting to practice more, but also really had an interest in, figuring out how I could bridge the gap between my art practice and my practice as a tattoo artist. And so I ended up coming up with Invisible Man, just thinking about some of my past experiences in tattoo shops, throughout the years. You know, you walk into a tattoo shop and the walls are filled with flash, and, you know, it's like, you know, exciting and also like overwhelming. But as a Black person, I never felt like I saw anything that mirrored my experience or people that looked like me at all. There's such a huge void. And so, you know, while I was thinking about that, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I can like, you know, create a tattoo shop where that is the main focus, is filling up this void where, you know, Black people have not been celebrated, like even thinking about like American traditional styles of tattooing, like where are the Black people? It doesn't make any sense. And so that whole project was focused on like celebrating the Black people and the Black American experience and Black excellence. And so, you know, a lot of the flash in that shop was just focused on that, but also, you know, just allowing people to feel like safe in that space. You know, it's an art space, so, you know, in general, it's going to be a little bit different from like a, you know, standard storefront tattoo shop. But yeah, I felt like people were really into the project, mostly because, you know, it's so different from anything that they had ever experienced. But that it was also really rooted in, you know, the fine art world.
So what did you get out of doing that? How did it make you feel after?
It made me feel really great because people were so into it. And I ended up getting so many submissions for tattoos. And even still, like, you know, people are reaching out like, hey, I remember like you did this image in Invisible Man. Like, are you open to still doing these images even though it's not going on anymore? And so that project, it lasted about 2.5 months. And I don't know, I feel like there definitely is a need for more of it. People are always asking me when am I going to do it again. And so it's like, okay, yeah. Now I know it's like, like people want this. Mm-hmm. And I think that also goes towards, you know, this argument that there's no one that has ever asked for it or wants it. And it's like, no, that actually is a total lie.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting to think that the imagery of tattooing has been so homogenized up to this point, and even still continues to be, when our clientele is infinitely diverse. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to make a restaurant that serves everyone's taste, you're not just going to sell grilled cheese sandwiches. Right. You got to like expand what your offerings are.
Yeah, exactly. Grilled cheese. Like you good reference.
I couldn't think of a more plain food that might not attract everybody, but maybe that would. Maybe I need something more specific for that example. And like I said earlier, that's what I've always loved about tattooing. People bringing in, this is an image that resonates with me. Can you do this for me? And then, you know, you got to do at least some amount of research sometimes to track down an image and to make sure that you're doing it right, not like mirroring details that are oriented towards the left or the right or whatever it may be. So I feel like I've learned so much about symbolism and culture and things that I would have never encountered without tattooing. But I feel like the longer that, or maybe the more that you do those events and stuff like that, it's just going to become what you do. So people aren't going to be like, oh, are you still doing this thing? They just know that this is what Doreen is offering.
Right. Yeah.
Which is probably going to feel pretty cool too.
Forever. Yeah. No. It feels amazing. Well, yeah, and even like thinking about how people kept questioning me about when I was going to do Invisible Man tattoo again. You know, just this past February, I did the Black Panther project, which basically was like, you know, it's kind of like a little mini version of Invisible Man tattoo, but I created this Black Panther flash where, you know, 28 people got the same tattoo, but in different parts of their body. But I was thinking about like, I don't know, camaraderie and also just like having shared experience and the idea that, you know, at some point 2 people might be at a concert and see the tattoo and be like, oh my God, Doreen did your tattoo. And like, you know, just have this like little small community based on like solidarity and the Black Panther movement and everything. But yeah, I feel like shared image can go a long way.
Plus, the Black Panther is like one of the coolest tattoo images that ever existed. So. So to give even more depth to that, I think is even cooler.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really resonated with me when you were saying about someone looking to get tattooed, looking for someone that they can relate to or that they can connect to. Because I never thought of it, obviously, because I've always felt that because the tattoo world is like geared towards me. Mm-hmm. So it's, I don't know. I like that perspective on it because it makes me think, you know, it really makes me consider that sort of stuff where I wouldn't have before because it hasn't been my experience that I have to. Mm-hmm. In that original Invisible Man event, compared to when you're just tattooing normally, as if it's like two totally, you're still doing tattoos either way. But did you find that the conversation with the clients at that event was much different because it was attracting a certain kind of person that was really there for more than just the tattoo?
Yeah, I did think that the conversations were much different. They were definitely like, you know, way more woke than before I did Invisible Man. But afterwards, I think that because people were more aware of me being available as a tattoo artist for them, that my clientele has changed. The demographic of my clientele has changed. And I think mostly at this point it's Black women. And so, you know, a lot of it has just, you know, transformed into like this sister girl moment where it's like, yeah, girl, like, I don't know, it's almost like salon talk and, you know, it's really healing and comforting to like, you know, be two like strong Black women in a space, you know, just sharing and like, you know, having conversations. But, you know, I try to keep the conversations light too.
Right, because it's heavy to tattoo all day and you got to like really take on people's burden sometime or like, you know, the weight of what they were talking about.
Yeah. A lot of times, you know, they're asking me about how I got into tattooing, but also like what I do. Cause like, you know, I also am a professor at Tyler School of Art. And so, you know, I'm talking to them about my class schedule, talking to them about the sculptures that I'm working on for shows, you know, asking them like what they do. A lot of times there's like people coming from school or like that are in an MFA program and they're just trying to figure it out. And it's, you know, a lot of that and, you know, just me also asking like what kind of shows they watch, you know, just bullshit conversations. Yeah. But I think that, you know, the conversations have been easy. Mm-hmm. There haven't really been any that I've struggled with so far.
Yeah. So my favorite question to ask usually because I'm seeking wisdom from others for myself. So I'll ask this for selfish reasons, although I'm sure people listening will enjoy it too. But how do you balance or like how do you go about time management?
God.
You do a lot of things.
I do so many things. And it was even worse last semester. So last semester I was teaching 2 classes in Philadelphia twice a week. And also tattooing 3 days a week. And then at that point, I was in my studio 1 day a week.
So that's like 9 days a week. I can't.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But I mean, now it's a little bit more moderate. So I'm teaching like a grad seminar class where they come up every other weekend. I tattoo at Saved right now from Sundays until Tuesdays. And that's because I'm working on my solo show, which is a sculpture show that's going to be at JTT Gallery that opens April 21st. And so I got like a little under a month to get my shit together.
We better wrap this up then.
Yeah.
You got shit to do.
Yeah. So but it really is hard to balance. It's hard to balance all the career things, you know, with the fine arts practice and the tattooing, but also like how to care for myself, like how to make
always gets put last.
Yeah, how to make sure I don't get burnt out, how to make sure I have time to spend with my friends, and you know, I mean, to be kind of personal, like, you know, I recently, you know, broke up with my fiance, and so, you know, even thinking about how time management has an effect on your relationships. And so, you know, it's just like you really have to figure out like what's most important. Sometimes it has to be like a seesaw. But really, I don't know. I don't know how I make it work. It just works.
There's almost no choice but for it to work in some fashion.
Yeah. And actually, like, I've been trying to get better about it too. This year, I'm trying to set like really concrete goals. And so one of the things on my list is to like plan 3 different vacations.
Yeah. Yeah. You almost have to structure it like it's of equal importance to the stuff, the goals that you're trying to do through your work and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. And do you feel like the more stuff you take on, it forces you to improve your time management, or is it just like at an all-time chaotic, hectic level right now?
Right. I used to say yes to everything. And now I feel like, I'm becoming, a lot wiser, and I'm definitely delivering a lot more no's. And I think that, that just helps you to stay sane, because, thinking about your life, time is the only thing that you can't get back. And so, why plug it up with all these tasks? I feel like I don't make enough time to enjoy my life. And so, in some ways, having all these responsibilities does give me some structure, because I think otherwise I might never leave my apartment. But then also like you have to balance and figure out like when you're overworking yourself and when you're just like, burning a candle at both ends.
Yeah. And I've always looked at creativity as being like, it's like a well that's self-replenishing, but you can spend it too fast.
Yeah.
And so if you're saying yes to everything, which is easy when not a lot of people are looking for a yes from you, but the more people, I'm sure people are asking you for all kinds of shit now. And there's no possible way you could do it all. And if you did, half of it would be stuff that just feels like busy work or like something that you're not really putting yourself into.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's like, you get asked to do these projects and you need time to think,
Especially when you set the bar pretty high with things that you've done in the past. You don't want to start putting out bullshit.
Yeah. You don't want to, dilute the quality at all.
Yeah.
The expectation is very high.
Yeah. And it only gets higher. At least it feels that way.
Yeah.
It's kind of the curse of like finding little successes along the way, but I guess that's what pushes us at a certain point. Do you think that having the formal art education has helped you to see the value in your own work and your time?
I think that the formal art education has improved like my social dynamics, just like figuring out how to, talk to people about their work and their practice, but also how they carry themselves within these spaces, and how to have like the more difficult conversations. I don't know necessarily how much it's made my work better, but it's made me think differently as far as like, research is concerned, and accessibility by the viewers and what it means to be an artist, what it means to be a viewer. I think that it's improved those things, but I think the art comes from within in general. So that's nothing that school can really improve on. It just helps you to think in a different way.
Right. It just gives you different tools to like pull it out of yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I asked because a lot of people who, they learn art through learning to tattoo. Basically, they don't have the foundation that you had before getting into it. I feel like it can be difficult to look at what we do without that foundation and put any value or feel like what we're doing offers a value. And then it can be easy to shortchange yourself.
Right. I mean, especially thinking about like the environment in tattoo shops. It's like, yeah, you might have a tattoo shop where everybody does really great work, but it might be, a totally toxic scenario for, people of color, queer people, where they don't feel safe. And so it's like, okay, so, you don't have the social etiquette to like maintain like a positive experience for a client, but you can provide a great tattoo. And then it's at what point, which one is more important, I think they should be pretty balanced.
Yeah, they have to be.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're socially inept, then you can't do it long term because you're not going to have any clients left. If you don't treat people well, that's, we can't do tattoos. We can't do tattoos without the customers. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, why live your entire life being an asshole?
Well, there's that too. But I think the hardest part is is identifying in yourself that you're an asshole.
Yes.
Otherwise, no one would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess lacking that context for yourself, if you are in a place where you don't have the best surroundings, then it's possible you could never learn. Mm-hmm. There are people that are 90 years old that are pieces of shit in every way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're not going to learn at that point either.
And I will tell you.
So we're here to tell you, 90-year-olds who are listening, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, suck a dick.
Are you starting a podcast?
I am going to start a podcast. So, also going towards, that question that we already asked, like the type of conversations I have with my clients. Some of my clients are really crazy characters. Mm-hmm. And so I want to, start this podcast called Different Strokes for Different Pokes.
Oh,
yeah.
I like it.
And then there's also an after hours show called Just Pokes.
You got it all figured out. So you're so structured in your approach to all this stuff.
Yeah. Well,
cool.
Yeah. And so, and I also used to have a radio show with my friend Kenya too. So I have like a little bit of experience in that. But I just think that, there are so many ways to, one, make yourself more visible as a person of color that's practicing tattooing. Also highlight your clients that are amazing people. And live amazing lives, and also just like, have people want to be a part of that conversation, because some of the things that we talk about are really enlightening, and I feel like it all should be shared.
Yeah, and I've thought, from what I've learned from doing this podcast for the past year, is that the ability to share ideas and information and opinions is so efficient through this format that people are willing to sit down and listen for an hour every week of you talking. And I think I underestimated that, because I assumed it was like, because I had made YouTube videos and stuff before this, and you see like the average retention rate. You make a 10-minute video, and on average people will watch for like 2 minutes. So I'm like, well, if I make an hour podcast, they might catch the first 6 minutes.
Right.
But then I find that people are totally willing and totally engaged with it. And I've never had more feedback than from these hour-plus long conversations that I assumed people would tune out for.
Right.
And then the other thing about podcasts that I think is so great is that it almost pays to be in like a super niche, because you don't have to appeal to everyone. It's not like you're making Good Morning America where you have to like do a cooking segment and then talk about politics and then talk about celebrities, and like you don't have to appeal to everyone. Mm-hmm. And that within tattooing, although there's a handful of tattoo shows out right now, there's room for so many more voices, and I don't think people are going to run out of an attention span to absorb all that stuff.
Right.
So I think your approach to it is probably going to bring a perspective that is definitely not being represented in the way that you're going to be able to do it. So I'm interested to hear it.
Yeah.
And I wish you a lot of luck with that. I can't wait to hear it.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Doreen Garner. Check her out at Save Tattoo in Brooklyn, New York. All of her info will be in the show notes. And once again, thank you to GoReminders for sponsoring this extended episode. All of their info is also in the show notes, so you can find your way to that 10% off lifetime discount. And that's all. Thanks for spending some extra time with me here this week, and I will see you on the next episode.